So Annie ended up winning the regionals for Houston, a great feat in and of itself. But what is this doing to the market prices? Are we seeing Annie absolutely skyrocket? Well, we're going to look at all the market prices and see just how this meta is changing. All of that and more starting right now. So that was absolutely a great match that we were able to see, and Annie's popularity has absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, if you would have told me that in a regionals, Annie would have actually ended up winning it all when this game at least first came out, telling me that, I would have thought that you were absolutely crazy, unless, of course, you were sold out telling me that. Still, though, this is something that's absolutely crazy, and we've seen an ever-increasing pool of Annie entering in. And it's going to be interesting to see how that is going to, again, affect these prices. I mean, we saw, even just last week, for example, a big difference in the sense of Set going up absolutely parabolic in prices, as well as Showstopper went from $60 to $100 after Atlanta, and also the good performance in Vegas as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of that continues to unwind. Even still, though, Annie is a little bit more difficult to get. The only way that you can get her is if you go ahead and pay an arm and a leg through people who are selling their Proving Ground decks, or if you actually just go ahead and purchase a Proving Grounds. Even still, though, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people are playing her even more so than Master Yi. She seems to have a pretty good matchup into everything, and is able to, stand against the best of them. Now, she can struggle, of course, with maybe going second, where that momentum, at least in the forefront of getting a lot of points early on, can be a little lost. But even still, with that, that's a lot of decks in general anyway, so it doesn't necessarily mitigate the power that she has. But the prices are going kind of crazy. Annie, for example, in the past 7 days, of course, this is data from magicalmeta.inc, and then we're going to be looking at the prices on TCG Arena for English and American prices. She's gone up in price a decent amount. Whoop. So this is the shocking part. Annie has gone ahead and skyrocketed. Just the legend card itself is going up to $39 at that point. Absolutely insane. Flash also. I mean, look at this. $53. You thought that $40 and even down to $30 for a common was insane. It was. But now it's at $50. So if you want to play this deck, good luck, in that sense, at least. Now, of course, you can still play it without the flashes. It's not absolutely needed, but still, it is going to be a little bit difficult to find in that case. Even still, though, the Proving Grounds is also even moving up. It was about $170, $175. Now it is going up to $211 for the 4 decks. And again, this is where a lot of people can get absolutely agitated in these prices, because Proving Grounds, it wasn't even necessarily something that was supposed to be all that competitive. It was an intro deck box, to give players a chance to experience either single player or multiplayer alike, and that is something that is incredibly helpful. Yay, that's awesome. Unfortunately, though, they ended up creating 2 of the best decks in this current meta, and that demand has absolutely just gone up. And that's very difficult again, and a lot of these prices are difficult because there are people who have found out about this game and want to play this game, of course, after release. And then they go online and they look at these prices and they're just like, there's no way that I can play these. And that's where it is really sad, unfortunately. Still, though, top 3 decliners, which is going to be really interesting too, is going to be Set in general. Now, of course, Set Brawler has fallen 16%, was around $29 originally, now going down to $21. The alt art as well is now at $29. A 15% was about $37, $35 as well with that. And then, of course, the order runes are even falling a little bit, which is interesting. Now, the mid-range, top three gainers. Now, we have seen a little bit of a increase in popularity with Teemo and Yasuo. We had Gale Wins, who was able to go ahead in the regionals as well, do an absolutely powerhouse of a run, and prove that Yasuo was able to make top 64. His deck list is absolutely crazy. We will be going over that in tomorrow's video, and it's just something incredibly cool to absolutely look at. Now, the cool thing about Teemo as well is a lot of people felt like Kaisa had just an overwhelming power when going into Teemo in this case. And in a lot of ways, yes, it can be a lot pretty difficult for you to be able to start going if you have Hextech Ray in your hand and you take out the Traveling Merchant or whatever your opponent might end up having. If they don't, though, and you are able to go ahead and start hiding cards and things of that nature, it can be an absolute grind for any deck, for that matter, to go ahead and face out Teemo. Now, the big thing with that as well is going to be that Mundo is absolutely impossible to defeat in that case, just because he's probably going to be at 20 might or more, and that's a lot to be able to take at. So Teemo is still absolutely a pretty cheap deck to be able to beat. This is of course going to be an alt art card if I recall correctly. No, that might be his legend card. I'm not quite sure either way because there's no picture. But I'm pretty sure it is his legend card. Same with Yasuo Unforgiven there in that case as well. And then salvage one of the removal gears. Going for now $5, and that is going to be an uncommon going for $5. Then Darius Executioner falling at that point. Fury Rune and Calm Rune also going down in price pretty significantly as well. Now, top three gainers, Magnaworm going up from 5 cents to 11 cents. Cool. Scrap Heap, though, is one that's definitely going to be talked about. The main reason for that is, again, it is a key piece in Annie. You either play Scrap Heap or you don't. That's going to be the big thing. But Scrap Heap, especially in Game 1, gives you such an advantage because you are going to be playing battlefields, or you're going to be playing Zon Warrens first, and also having Traveling Merchant and things of that nature. So there are many ways to go ahead and discard Scrap Heap, and when you do, you immediately just replace it. So it's a great deck thinner, kind of like the Pot of Greed of Riftbound in this case, because yeah, it's just you're essentially playing 37 cards at that point with that, and being able to draw 2 is absolutely insane. It immediately replaces itself, so just crazy. Now, top three decliner, Soaring Scout, First Mate, and Cruel Patron. Now, this is going to be a little bit interesting to understand as well. Now, don't look at the Spirit Forge booster display. That's not anything to bat an eye at. It's TCG player prices is what this is reflecting, so keep that in mind. Origins is going up to 211. We've already talked about that. Flash going up 59% or $20. Misfortune signature, sure, and the Origins booster case going up to near 1900, which is over $300 per box. The Teemo Scout GG Easy promo that you get in one of the boxes is absolutely really cool to be able to see. Going for $330 still, but has had a little bit of a price decline. Now, Teemo, the overnumbered card, going for $100. Showstopper going down to 71 in that case, and Time Warp going down to 82. And Yasuo overnumbered, absolutely plummeting down $8. Now, this is average daily quantity sold, so this is something to really watch for. And the biggest thing, too, is runes are still the #1 most sold cards, and rightfully so. It makes a lot of sense. But the fact that they are going for 50 to 80 cents, essentially, is a little crazy. So the big thing to keep in mind with that, though, is the only way to literally get runes at this point is either one of the starter decks, or you are going to be able to pool one per pack. And, well, when packs are pretty scarce, what are you going to be able to do about it? So, rightfully so, those are going to absolutely have a demand, and it's going to still have a demand until we get a rune pack box, essentially, which actually is going to be coming out in Spirit Forge. They have a booster draft box that is going to be for sale, where 4 competitors get 6 packs, and they are able to build their decks, and then it comes with like 200 runes, something like 160 or 200 runes, something like that. And that's going to be something to really make a difference there as well. So, again, don't be too worried about these prices. Defy going up 623 sold in that case at 71 cents. Ride the Wind definitely makes sense in that case. Same with Stack Deck. We're seeing a spike in price in that as well, though not nearly as aggressive as what we've already seen. But Stack Deck still is holding around $7 for an uncommon. Sprite Mother, really good card. Darius has actually stayed around the same price in this case. Tide Turner is a Teemo card. Same with Mind Splitter. And, pretty average stuff right there. Nothing really too out of the ordinary here. Singularity going up to 159 is a little bit of a surprise there as well. But otherwise, everything else is looking moderately normal. So, and I say normal kind of loosely just because these prices are already so high as it is. Anyway, we are going to be looking at something a little bit different today at prices high to low. So, right there, we are still seeing the Kaisa signature going for $1,700, which is just absolutely insane. Great to be able to see. Even higher, though, than the Ari. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens to the Kaisa decks if they are going to start falling in price, potentially. A lot of people did end up taking Kaisa to the regionals at this point. 33% of the field was Kaisa decks. And because of that, a lot of them did not make day two. They probably still did well, but those who just got absolutely steamrolled might be starting to sell their stuff on TCG Player, so we might start seeing, Thousand Tail Watcher come down a little bit, probably like $5 or so, things of that nature, of people who are getting rid of their decks to potentially build something else. So that's going to be the interesting part with that, and we'll see how, all of this starts to go. Now, Riftbound World Bundles, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be trying to sell theirs. Some people were also able to get their hands on them at the regionals, and at the same time, this is going to be also shipping out come December anyway. We're already in December, so into December it should start shipping out, so definitely something to keep in mind. Same with the League of Legends Arcane box set, so both of these should maybe come down in a little bit of price, or even start to spike a little bit as well, so time again will tell. It'll be fun to see how all of that continues to go. Again, ignore the booster displays. Wave 2 is still supposedly coming. We'll see what kind of impact that will end up having. But still, it's going to be fun to see what that is going to be able to do. And hopefully things will be able to calm down. Now, Alt-Art Kaisa is still going absolutely crazy. I was able to luckily find one at my local game store for $91. Bought it with store credit, so I got lucky there. Even still, though, it's going to be a little bit crazy to see Dead Blue Predator at $100. The fact that the Victor alt art is at $100, and same with the Dead Bloom Predator, completely different kind of stuff, but still absolutely crazy there. And then, of course, the Ari promo was $90. This is still really interesting to consider as well because, yeah, there was a lot of people who were buying this card originally for $100 before the game even came out because they had the promos that they were giving out at events and things of that nature for people to try the trial decks. And so because of that, a lot of people were paying $100, and turns out, yeah, it's actually kind of just fluctuating. This is probably going to be a hold long card. The longer, of course, this card is going to be in here, the better chance you have of it going up in price, but we'll see. Time Warp going down to $80 as well. Good to see it under. It got about $105 at the peak, and that's really good to see. Likewise, though, it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with Dazzling Aurora. It has fallen in price. It was at about $95 for a really long time, but we actually had a second place Yi deck that ran Aurora for game 1, and then game 2, game 3 was just a regular Yi deck, and so really interesting to see if that's going to get a little bit of a spike. We have seen some spikes in general, but again, we're even seeing a little bit of a decrease in Kaisa. She was $92 last week. Again, this is why I waited a little bit on these prices just to be able to see if the regionals actually has a little bit of an impact on the market. If I did it on Sunday, of course, like I normally do, that wouldn't be the case. Now, even White Flame Protector, who was at $75 at one point, has even started to come down to $63. Yi seems to be struggling a little bit at regionals or high caliber tournaments, even to the point where they're just kind of not necessarily making the top cut as aggressively as what we've seen in other tournaments. especially in China, for example. And so the representation, it was still the second most represented deck next to Annie in that case by literally just a couple of decks. So really close there in representation, but still didn't necessarily have an absolutely great day two. I think it was like 7% of the decks ended up making day two. So something to consider there and why it very well might be falling in price. Then we also just recently got the Spirit Forge deck boxes revealed. We know that one signature spell is going to be in each box. So if you want the Fiora signature spells, cool. If you don't pull them, you can buy 3 boxes of the deck itself, and you're going to be able to get your 3 just fine. So that's good to be able to see, and I'm going to be curious to see what else will end up happening with these prices as well. Again, 45 is not going to be anything crazy or to bat an eye at. You should be able to pick this up at your local game store for near $20 to $30 instead. And again, it doesn't even come out until January or February anyway, so who cares? With that, of course, Ecathian Rain has seen an absolute plummet at this point, which is really interesting to consider. And I really think the reason is a lot of people are now conditioned to go against Kai'Sa. That's definitely something to keep in mind with all of that. Because the big reason is Ecathian Rain, unfortunately, is such a powerful card, but now everyone's like, okay, you do you, Kai'Sa. I know what to expect, so here's what I'm going to do in response. And Kai'Sa's win rate is starting to decline a little bit, so something to keep in mind with that. Baited Hook still at $44, which is interesting. It's gone up between 38 and 44. Hasn't necessarily gone above and hasn't necessarily gone below. Thousand Tail Watcher has fallen about $4 since last Sunday, so kind of interesting there. And Seal of Unity has fallen also about $10. Now, of course, Annie has skyrocketed in price again. Kind of crazy. That's how it is. Now, otherwise, stuff is kind of looking pretty normal. Bullet Time falling about $7. Zenith Blade falling about $5. Set falling about $9, just like what we've discussed. And Misfortune falling about $8 as well. So, kind of interesting stuff. And even the Altart Darius falling about $6 in that case, was around $28 last Sunday as well. So, something to consider there. Now, Guerrilla Warfare, luckily the nice part about this card is you are only going to be running 1 in this case. So, good for you on that. If you do want to run this is probably going to be your most expensive card that you are going to be running in this case, but still it's not necessarily anything insane to watch out for. And again, $20 is going to be the max. I could definitely see this going down to 10 if Wave 2 hits successfully. That's going to be the biggest thing if it hits well. Still Foxfire is at $17, kind of crazy. Same with Ari Inquisitive going to 16. She could very well be seeing some really fun action in this next set, but the biggest thing with her is her being at 3. She falls to any removal pretty dang easily, and Falling Star cannot be countered or defied. I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, and so that can make it pretty easy then in that case for Ari to fall, and especially when you pay 3 and a power. That can suck. Now, of course, these are going to be all of the alts that we are going to be seeing here in this case. And so Mind Runes going for 14, Body Runes, all that jazz. Nothing too crazy there. Mystic Reversal has ended up actually dropping a little bit in price. It's a good card to definitely side in and one to really watch out for on the if you're playing any green. If you go ahead and Time Warp and you're playing Kai'Sa, for example, and they Mystic Reversal it, they take control of your Time Warp. And, you know, they're definitely happy about doing that. So, with that, though, the rest of the prices have actually been staying pretty much the same. Cadragan ended up falling a couple of dollars, like $2 or $3. Teemo ended up falling. The Altart ended up falling about $4 in that case. Otherwise, everything else is kind of the same. Victor even falling about $4. Some people are selling the oversized cards in this case. Now, of course, you could probably take it to your local game store and get away with playing it, but taking it to a skirmish, you're not going to be allowed to play it. You could get in a DQ or something along those lines if you at least didn't bring the other one. If you did it as a joke, people would probably be fine. Darius has actually stayed around the same price. We've seen him go between $8 and $12. Now he's around $9, pretty solid as well. Kiana going around $9. She hasn't necessarily seen a whole lot of flair going for her. She's very difficult to be taken out by Kaisa, and it can suck a little bit for Annie in that case, but still, you just go ahead and you're almost okay with pushing her back and paying the deflect cost with a fight or flight. And so there's just a couple of things that you need to be watchful of in that case. Even still, though, Falling Star has actually been coming down in price. It was at $22 at the peak, essentially, and now it's going down to about $9. Again, it originally started at around $3. It wasn't a very expensive one, just as rare as the Thousand Tail Watcher, but again, Thousand Tail Watcher is pretty much a staple in any blue deck at that point, so it's going to definitely have that much more of a demand. Falling Star is as well, but like, for example, in Annie, maybe you run one, maybe you put one in the side deck, but you're not guaranteed to run 3 like what you normally are with Thousand Tail Watcher. So otherwise, these prices are looking pretty similar. Tasty Faithful has fallen about 50 cents. Annie Stubborn is at $8.21. Not the worst, not the best. And Stack Deck, like what we've talked, has fallen about $1 in this case, but nothing absolutely crazy. And things are kind of just stagnating out. It's going to be interesting to see how these continue to keep falling in price. I'm going to be curious on if we can get that market shift with Wave 2, if things can just really plummet. Now, of course, this is going to be the tough part. If Wave 2 ends up actually hitting decently at this point, the difficult part with that is going to be the fact that those who are now waiting on product are going to just go ahead and explode in and take everything at that point to try to get things going, as well as those who are seasoned in here. We were able to get product from the get-go. We were able to build the decks that we probably wanted to and whatnot, and we bought the pieces outside of that otherwise, and now we also want to maybe build a second deck or things of that nature, and good luck. So that's going to be something pretty interesting to try to play around in this case. And again, the biggest thing with Wave 2 is that they cannot just go ahead and be a big release of it. They need to then keep out a constant flow of product. Some is better than none in that case even. And if they can keep ramping it up, even better. So again, though, we'll continue to see how everything seems to price out. But things are looking a little bit better, and at least things aren't continuing to skyrocket. That's probably one of the best things to be able to see. Now, again, like what I've said in previous videos, people follow the hype. Annie ends up doing really good. Prices skyrocket for Annie. Set ends up doing really good. Prices skyrocket. Well, if Ari somehow ended up doing good, Ari would skyrocket. It's just how it is. People follow the hype, and people are like, oh, this deck is really good. I must play it. We saw that with Kaisa, we saw that with Yi, we saw that with any of these other decks that I just mentioned. It will continue to be that way. Set 2 is going to be the big thing too. Hey, look at this underlying deck that actually did good a week after release. Whoa, that is really good. Let's go ahead and buy up that deck, kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing about that, and one thing that I'm a little bit hesitant about before we end this video, is Set 2 is coming out for China this week. That's something that we need to be very mindful of, because that meta is going to start being defined. And yes, while China ends up playing a slightly different meta than what we normally play in English as a whole, there are still a lot of things to pull from, especially with regionals coming right after Set 2 is released. We got Vegas, we got, even stuff over in Europe, if I recall correctly, right after. And so it's going to be difficult to be able to see how that alone is going to be. And if, Set ends up doing really good in Set 2, or whatever else, or Rumble ends up doing really good, Draven and whatnot ends up just, absolutely dominating, it's going to be like, cool, well, what do we end up doing about that then? So, really interesting to see. We're going to continue to watch and do weekly videos. We're following this each and every week on Sunday, so feel free to subscribe to that if you want to follow the market. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this week. Definitely just wanted to wait to see how the prices were going to influx on that, because, yeah, it looks like Annie has actually gone up in price a little bit after the regionals. But that's going to be it for now, and hopefully you guys are having a great December and staying warm out there. But until next time, guys, have a good one.